Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about testing. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, why is there so much focus on development rather than testing and deployment? Because it's the thing that is perceived as being the thing that makes money. Uh, this is a common thing that happens in all organizations, I would say. So usually when you're talking to business people or whoever is in charge of any organization and you ask them where is your revenue coming from, they will be able to tell you very quickly what is like their business model and what revenue the streams they have and so forth and so forth. But if you've asked them where is your biggest waste in terms of where are you losing most of your, or where is your highest operational cost or something like that, most people won't be able to tell you, because most people are very aware of where the money is coming from, but not where it's leaking out. That's a more difficult problem. If you want to see this in action, you should, as I like to say, if you want to know how valuable you are to an organization, you should see how far you get with initiatives. So if, for example, you work in the call center or you work in the support center in like a store or something like that, or service or something like that, you will basically never get any help. Almost never. But if you work in sales, acquisition, things like that, you might see a very different sort of response. It's not always the case, but as I like to say, the closer you are to being on doing the thing that people perceive as the thing that brings in the money, the more likely you are to get support, because that's the high value stuff, right? And for us software developers, it's the same thing. The idea is that the quicker you can develop, the more money you will make, because you can ship more features, therefore you can bring in more functionality, more customers, etc., etc. That's the idea. It's sort of the factory's mindset as well. The faster I can produce my products, the better. And this mindset usually is, it's usually very naive. It's not naive in the beginning, because in the beginning of things, as I've said before, guys, when you have a small project, usually there's, as I like to say, there's a balance between how fast can you move versus how much do you like, how many quality issues do you get from moving that fast. And my argument is always that the goal for you is to move as fast as possible without going under the minimum quality level that you require for your business. And that is it tunes depending on the size of the company, it tunes depending on the type of system you're building, etc., etc. I mean, if there's usually a higher margin for error within your system. People are more accepting of errors. If you have like a standard web shop or something like that, they're not going to be very happy if it's a bank and you have like rounding issues, or like they are losing, you mess things up for them with their accounts or something like that. So it really much quote unquote depends, as everybody likes to say. And so that's usually what happens. But I also tell you that that's only true if we talk about the average case up until a certain point, because as I like to say, the thing that happens when you do only focus on development for too long is that people start losing trust in the system. And the best measurement that you will have for that is release fear. Release fear is the best measurement. So basically the thing that I call release fear, well, it's probably not my term, is when a software team postpones releasing into production. On a Friday is very common, but some people don't want to do it at all. You will see this in the Kanban boards that they use and so forth. If they usually have a lot of stuff piling up at the last step of releasing something, and they're not really comfortable just releasing things, or it feels like they're losing something, or that they're taking a risk or something like that, that's when you have an issue with testing and deployment. And that's usually the first sign that people are starting to get afraid of releasing things into production, because they don't have confidence in their own process. I argue that that's the job of a good engineering manager or tech lead or something like that. That is your primary responsibility towards the team. That if I'll go as far as to say that you can measure your success as a leader in a technical team by how much release fear you have. If you have a lot of release fear, you're not doing a good job. If you have almost none or very, very little, you're doing usually a fairly good job. Because your job should be to set up the process so that you have the necessary practices and tooling and so forth, so that developers feel safe when they're doing releases and things like that. And most people, like this is, as I said, that's that balancing act. Some people don't like having a lot of process, some people like having a lot of process. It really comes down to what's going to fit your specific situation. The reason why I think that you have to do this as well without sort of, usually you're not going to get like a buy-in or anything like that. You're not going to be able to just say, oh, we should just write tests or something like that. It's something you need to introduce and basically say that this is an expectation and then do it iteratively over time. Is simply because nobody's going to want, as I said, like if the service counter comes and complains and says that we need more people to deal with all the problems we have with the product, most people with money, like the whole money mag, are going to go, yeah, we could give you that money, but we don't have to. It's better if we go and put that into marketing or something like that because of reasons and so forth. It's the same thing here, which is why I tell software developers going and asking for big rewrites and things like that is usually not the way to change this sort of behavior. And the same thing is true for good technical leaders. You're not going to change anything by doing this. What you should do is to introduce, as I like to call it, gateways, gateway systems. And a gateway system is basically what a CI pipeline is all about. You have automated testing or something like that that validate that the code is working. And if the software developers are, pushing something that isn't working, it should tell them that it's not working. And you can do the same thing for shifting over to a higher level of focus on testing and deployment without having to really do much in terms of politics. And the only thing you have to do is to introduce things like code coverage, or introduce things such as having an opinion and saying that you should be writing tests, or like adding in these quality checks as part of the release process. Because if you do that, basically what you will get is by organically a higher focus on testing and deployment and things like that, because it's now a requirement for the people who are working. If you give people a job and say you can do it however you want, and it doesn't turn out well, it's usually because you gave them too much freedom, and now you have to introduce some rule sets or some process in order to fix the things that are not working. Then you do that, and if you do that well, they might complain a little bit because they might not like it, or some people would love it, and then they adjust. And then you try to, because what the goal should be is to give the developers maximum freedom without compromising on the quality. And that is how you achieve focus on testing and deployment. Because if you have a strong focus on that the quality of the system, that it should always be working and so forth, you will get focus on testing and deployment by default, because no software developer is ever going to be able to write flawless code without those things in place. So, what I want you to take away from this is that usually the reason why development is in higher focus than testing and deployment and things like that is because it's perceived to be the thing that is making the company money. And that's usually true for any organization. Most organizations have a very good understanding of where the money is coming from, what's making the money, all of this sort of stuff. Operations costs and where waste is happening and stuff like that, they usually don't have an understanding of that. It's actually usually it's a harder political sale for most people within an organization to sell that we can save money. That's hard in comparison to we can make more money. That's an easier conversation to have with most businesses. And so if you want to shift this, all you really have to do, if you're a team leader or something like that, is to understand that when things such as release fear and quality issues become more of a bother, most teams will just continue as they are, guys. Most teams, like a team list, like that's how you measure really shitty software teams. Like when it comes to leadership, they just continue and just sort of live with the pain and allow that thing to fester and rot and just continue. Good leadership within this sort of situation will introduce small gradual changes that basically shifts the way that you are doing work. And as I said, you can take this to the bank. Release fear is the best measurement for how competent your tech lead is. Have a great day.